Thanks, Roger, for the introduction, and thanks for having me this evening to speak. As Roger said, I am the conservation officer for a charity called Save Britain's Heritage. We were established in 1975 to fight the demolition of historic buildings and the neglect of many others. And I'll come to that in more detail as the slides go on. I am a music graduate originally, but I retrained in planning after a few years as an A-level teacher, geography and other things I did in my previous careers. And as a planner, it's a very important part of my role at SAVE. I'll call Save Britain's Heritage SAVE, just to save time. So just in case you wonder what I'm talking about. I just thought I'd start with a really brief introduction to the heritage world, really brief, and then obviously to SAVE itself and what we do and why our work I think is important. And then of course we'll come on to the kind of key things that we do, and I'll use examples of case studies and campaigns that we're running currently to show that. And one of which, of course, most importantly, is the home farm at Minley Manor, which I'm sure, well, I hope some of you will be interested to hear about the ongoing campaign to save that. But so with no further ado, probably most of you are aware of or have heard of English Heritage and its former pairing charity called Historic England. They are the key core basis of the UK's heritage planning setup. So in England, that is, so Historic England are the government's heritage advisors. So they deal with all planning matters to do with listing buildings and to do with planning applications. English Heritage, you'll probably know, manage 1,200 odd properties, and they are a charity that look after and maintain those similarly to the National Trust, such as Great Whitley, which is very close to me here in Worcestershire. You've got National Trust, of course, maybe some of you are members. They have a very different remit. They look after many more buildings and landscapes. They are also a charity, have a very interesting setup. They're a fantastic selection of properties. I'm sure many of you have enjoyed them. The Landmark Trust, another member of the heritage family in the UK, they manage a lot of amazing properties. If you haven't booked and stayed at one, I highly recommend it. They have an incredible selection of places to go and stay. There are 6 what's called heritage amenity societies. They form part of, they have specialties in certain periods of architecture, and they inform decisions around applications for planning and other matters to do with historic buildings of their period. So starting very brief, you've got the Victorian Society. Some of you may have heard of them. Obviously, they manage buildings of the Victorian era. Here's St Pancras Station that was almost demolished in 1968, but thanks to them, isn't and was saved. They've got the 20th Century Society, kind of says what it does on the tin. They manage many properties in terms of their planning applications related to this. Is the Stockwell bus station. May not be a cup of tea of architecture, but you know, it's grade 2 listed. Got the Georgian Group, look after the Georgian buildings of the Georgian period. Here's some heavily neglected Georgian mansions in Bristol, which we are fighting to get the owner to repair. As you can see on the right hand side, they're in a terrible condition. You've got the Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings, which is a very specific organisation that looks to repair buildings in a very authentic way with authentic skills and materials. Here's Astley Castle, a very famous example. You can go and stay here, of course. It's a Landmark Trust property, but an interesting mix of medieval fabric and a modern house in the middle. Gardens Trust, who manage gardens like here at Sheffield Park in West Sussex. Again, their specialty and expertise is in obviously gardens and parks. Got the Friends of Friendless Churches, who look after lots of lonely churches around the country and try and find new uses for them and make sure that they are promoted. They are attached to another group called the Ancient Monument Society, but I won't go into them. Theatres Trust look after historic theatres, like here in Morecambe. British Archaeology Council looks after the archaeology. Here's HS2 site outside Euston, where they found, obviously, they've had to move a burial ground that dates to the medieval period. So not an easy business, but obviously they've been heavily involved in all of that. So where does SAVE fit into all of this? Well, we are not a legal body like the amenity societies are. We're not consulted on planning applications, is what that means. But we were established in 1975, primarily to stop the demolition of so many historic houses. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of historic houses of, beauty, beauty untold were demolished during the period, because post-war depression in the 1960s, residentialisation, a lot of these buildings became surplus to requirements. Owners couldn't keep up with the costs of maintaining them, and they fell into ruin. So this is an exhibition at the Victoria and Albert Museum in 1975, which sort of launched our first campaign, which was to try and save these buildings and raise public awareness about these amazing buildings. Here's a few of them being demolished. Amazing things which were just, laid to rubble, and now most of them sit in landfill. Some others which have been lost over the years, just a selection of the many, many hundreds. But as Roger said, our core remit, and this is really important to our work, is it keeps it really simple, is that we fight to protect historic buildings, listed or unlisted, doesn't matter, against the threat of demolition, decay, and neglect. And our key thing is that we're often through finding new uses for them, rather than just trying to keep them in aspect forever. It's about finding new uses and new ways of enjoying the historic environment, rather than keeping it as a museum piece. Part of that is that we catalogue and promote buildings at risk on our online catalogue. We have over 1,500 buildings at risk, which are nominated by members of the public. We spot buildings that they're worried about, and we add them to the list so that we can raise their profile and certainly take them on as campaigns when we can. And I guess because we're not a legal body, we don't receive any government funding, nothing like that. We are totally reliant on our membership and our supporters. We are able to promote and try and save historic buildings of all kinds and sizes, and I'll try and show you a selection of those during my slides. And we use social media, a press, and an annual events program, which is really opening up again with tentative in-person events in the autumn, but also plenty of online events which our members have access to, which showcase our work. As an organisation, we're a very small body. We're only 6 people, but we are a mixture of architectural historians, engineers, and planners, and that's really important, that mix of expertise in what we do. So I thought I'd break down what we do into kind of 6 simple blocks. So firstly, publications, reports, and press, dealing with planning applications, taking action, often legal action, commissioning alternative schemes to show how buildings can be reused, and we keep our buildings at risk register, and finally we support and often submit listing applications for buildings. So first of all, publications, reports, and press coverage. We have over 50 books and reports which have been printed and published over the years, many of which are available on our website, but they essentially catalogue the many, many cases that we've won and lost over the years. And if any of you are interested after the talk, it's certainly a great way of getting a bit more information about SAVE's historic work. There'll be examples from every part of the UK in there. There's some other selection. But another key thing is we get a lot of press coverage for our campaigns. We're trying to save a Grade 1 listed hall in Conway in North Wales called Kinmel. It's got 250 rooms. It's been left to rot by a series of offshore owners in the British Virgin Islands through shell companies. But this is the kind of example of trying to raise the profile of buildings that we're trying to save. And although it's a variety, we're trying to save a mural in a postmodern church in Oldham. Mural was by a famous Jewish emigre artist called George Mayer Marton. It's essentially a big mosaic on the wall, but it's really important part of post-war history. And this is Air Station Hotel in Ayrshire in Scotland, which again owned by an offshore Malayan owner who has done nothing to it since 2012. So it's rotted. Here it is in 2018, and here it is in 2021. It's wrapped in plastic scaffolding for safety reasons, the entire building at a cost to the council of £50,000 a week. because the owner refuses to do any maintenance to it. And we're trying to encourage them to sell so that something can be done before it falls down. This is a set of buildings on Fleet Street in London. You can see St Paul's in the distance there, but ceremonial route through the City of London, very important historic thoroughfare. City of London Corporation, the council there, wants to demolish all the buildings on the right. So we're trying to fight to save those. At the moment, there's a real range. There's a massive Barclays Bank that's a big classical building, and you've got this amazing Victorian pub, which all set to be bulldozed. So, planning applications, next part of our work, probably the main part of my work as a conservation officer. What that means is that I essentially do what a conservation officer might do at a council, which is to deal with planning applications for historic buildings. So, Minley Home Farm, the one everyone's been waiting for. So, obviously, you know where it is. This is a slide from a different presentation, show people where we are, but what a lovely set of buildings. 1900, a set of buildings by an architect called Arthur Castings as part of the Minley Manor estate, which was largely owned by the Ministry of Defence until the mid-50s, but it sold off parts of its estate over the years. So the manor itself is in private ownership. I think it's owned by a Chinese lady who runs it as a very successful hotel, or perhaps it's a film venue. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, it's quite secretive. But Home Farm, 800 metres to the south, owned by the MOD since 1932, but since 2010 it's been largely derelict and has been left to completely rot, as you can see. But a wonderful set of buildings, really decorative brickwork. It was originally built to house rare breed livestock, which Arthur Curry, the owner of the manor at the time, was very interested in. This is post the agricultural depression that Britain went through. The Victorians were very keen to invest in farming, state-of-the-art farming methods, as they were in many industries. So the building is carefully designed around a section of sheds and yards. And there's little cottages for workers. And as you can see here, back in the 50s, it looked very well kept, very neat, very nice integrated set of buildings. Here's some of the stables. Apologies for the photographs; they are quite small. But yeah, it says here in its heyday. Here's the manor itself, which I'm sure many of you know, may have walked past. Massive Gothic masterpiece. And here's the Home Farm, and looking from an aerial photograph, looking very, very sad. I'll come on to the neglect very shortly. Some more images of it, courtesy of Darren Buckland. So how did it come to us? So SAVE was alerted by, I think, some dog walkers who walked past the site and spotted this planning notice. And it was simple as that. It was a notice saying that the demolition would be taking place in about 4 weeks' time from the date of the notice. So this is just back in February. We immediately took action and looked into the plans, which the MOD essentially wanted to demolish. You can see the Home Farm here in the orange sort of floor plate in the middle there, and you can see in pink what they wanted to put in its place, which is basically a concrete shelter for troops and a little bat house. The rest of it will be flattened and lost forever, which would be a real shame. And you can see how close it is to Minley Manor itself. Which is just to the top left of the image there. But we using Google Earth, which is a free tool, you can use it. Anyone can use it. Maybe some people have. You can track aerial photographs of any buildings, most that are photographed over the ages, ever since the 1980s, really. Some before, but you can see here in 1999, the Home Farm was looking okay. Most of its roofs are on. You can see by 2005 a lot of it was gone already, being let go. This is all under the MOD's ownership. See, so 2013 you can see trees starting to grow through it. 2020 more trees, a lot of roof gone. So this is where we've been left today. So say you've got into action, and what we do is we try and promote the plight of these kinds of buildings. So we use press releases. In this case, we were celebrating the objection that we put in. So we took legal advice about the nature of the application for demolition. and it was found to be non-compliant. It's under what's called permitted development rights, which some of you may or may not know, basically allows applicants to do various things, including demolition, without the need for planning permission. So no planning policy matters. It's really a question of whether it meets the legal tests of the coalition government of 2010's General Permitted Development Order, it's called. That's the policy. And it basically allows various things to be done, certainly largely on grounds of public safety and danger of buildings if they're falling in down. But we objected to the council very strongly, and we offered this legal advice. And I'm glad to say that Hart District Council heeded that and rejected the application. So gave us some breathing room to try and do something about the buildings, and rather than just leaving them there vulnerable again to another application. So press releases, we got some national press coverage. We started to do some research, and we found the original drawings by the architects in the Reber archive. These are just a selection of them, but you know, these are 120-year-old drawings in colour with nice watercolours. It's a really pretty set of buildings, very detailed drawings, an architect of great skill. And maybe some of you saw last week on ITV, there was a full feature-length piece on it. It's available on their website, the date 23rd of July there. And here's our director, Henrietta Billings, being interviewed for it. But just a sort of sample of what can be done when you start to put the information out there, start to get people's imaginations and people getting involved in the heritage around where they live. Because without this action, the buildings probably would have been demolished, because public awareness is difficult in rural, very rural locations like this. But we've gone further than that. So with all the information that we found, we put in a listing application to Historic England, and we've got support from national experts on model farms from the Victorian period, Victorian estates, the Pevsner historical architectural guides, you name it. We've got plenty of evidence that we put into Historic England, but we've gone a step further, because these buildings won't get any better without ideas and creativity to try and find new uses for them. So we've commissioned ideas in a concept scheme. It's not a planning application, it's just a concept scheme to show what could be done and viably done with the building. So this is by an architect called John Burrell, who we've worked with for many, many years, showing, giving a sense of how the building could look if it was to be used again and open to the public rather than hidden behind barbed wire railings, and restored to its full glory. And I hope you'd agree, it's a large complex, it could have multiple different uses in them. And I'll come on to some examples of other home farms which have been converted similarly. So these are some of John's drawings showing how the brickwork, the very decorative brickwork, could be restored very easily. It doesn't look like there's much left of some of the roofs, but these buildings, they last forever in many ways. And it's remarkable what you can restore, even if the photographs don't make you immediately think they are. Other drawings by John. And here's another home farm at Waddesdon Manor, which is another amazing country estate. But again, the farm was largely derelict and needed new use. And it's been successfully converted into a set of farm shop and small business units, plus a thriving wedding venue, which makes a lot of money and is a really good use of the building because it's a beautiful location. And here it is looking fantastic. And we haven't used this as an example of what we want to do with Minley Home Farm, but obviously we want to encourage the MOD to sell the site to someone who was willing to do something with the site, so it can be brought back into public use. So Minley Home Farm, some of you may have questions, so please do ask afterwards, but we're still awaiting the outcome of the listing application, and so do keep an eye on our website for any updates on that. So, but moving swiftly on to some of other cases and planning applications that we're fighting again. There's a little Victorian schoolhouse in Herefordshire, so very, very rural, small community. This is the building here. It's 1877 little schoolhouse, very early of its kind. So there's what's called a board school, so it had kids living there with schoolmasters next door. It's a nice building. It's one of the only historic buildings in the village now. And And here's the local villagers who came out in campaign for their heritage. This is basically the entire village, which is fantastic. So it shows what people can do when they're coordinated to try and save something. But the owner of the building lives a few counties away. He, despite having planning permission to convert it to 2 houses, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to demolish it to build a lorry maintenance depot in the middle of a village. So it shows you what some people want to do and why some people want to stop that. But research with villagers brought back loads of images of the school over the years, even original architect's drawings. Someone had a copy of those. So it's amazing what you can find out when you start to spread the word. Again, planning notices were put out. The one in this case is the one on the left, which was the applicant carefully put behind some rusty cast iron fencing, so that was really helpful. And this is actually not in the public realm. So again, SAVE took legal action in this case, and we averted the demolition. Thankfully, the council decided in our favour without having the legal action go further. The local village got lots of press coverage, which is amazing in such a small area. But and they even found an example of a very similar schoolhouse in the next door village, which same year, 1877, same idea, converted to 2 houses. And look, I think it looks brilliant. Lots of original features kept, even the original windows. Shows you what can be done when you have some imagination and some people who are really passionate about their heritage. So we've very much supported the local campaign in that instance. So moving on, we take bigger types of action when we need to, and legal action is certainly a big part of that. So firstly, I wanted to give you a range of case examples rather than we don't do just one kind of thing, and we don't just do one kind of period. We fight for all sorts of things. So the Sandonia in Stafford, which is north of Birmingham, between sort of Lichfield and up towards Newcastle on the Line. Amazing 1920 cinema with a sort of faïenced big triumphant arch in the middle, all tiled, built to reward veterans who'd survived and returned from the Great War, with access to the pictures, which was very important at the time, the talkies more specifically. And also the many, Stafford was very famous for shoe making, which and a lot of the shoemakers made shoes for soldiers in the war, which is quite an interesting thing. Again, so this was very much a celebration post First World War for the people of Stafford who returned. Anyway, the owner is a private individual. He has owned it for 10 years and now wants to demolish the building. But it'd been sitting there for a while, nothing had happened, no applications had come in to do anything with it. But suddenly, overnight, on the bank holiday a few weeks ago, there was scaffolding erected and demolition contractors were seen on site with big arm cranes starting to knock down the walls. But luckily we had a local contact, this guy Jack, who on the ground monitoring everything very, very closely, and we managed to we swung into gear very quickly. We took our legal injunction against the owner to stop the demolition, because it turns out they had no permission of any kind to do the demolition. So presumably they were going to do it, either no one noticed it or they were going to apply after doing it to get planning permission. So it boggles the mind what some people do, but anyway, it's an amazing campaign. This guy set up a Facebook page which is spread the word. He's got press coverage. He's got a BBC Midlands Today a feature on it as well, and there it is. But overall, we stopped the demolition, and we're looking at again finding an alternative use scheme to try and keep that main facade with the building behind us as an important part of the town. So an example of some of the things we do of different scales. Anglia Square in Norwich. Maybe some of you know Norwich. This is a 1960s redevelopment site just north of the River Wensum in central Norwich, so in East Anglia. Norwich, medieval city, famous 13th century cathedral spire, many other church spires, and the town hall in the background there. typical streets. They're not all like this, of course. Nowhere's all like this, but Norwich has a very intact historic character. Here's the view from the river. They even have some amazing Sterling Prize winning council house developments. There's a new estate called the Goldsmith Street, which won the Sterling Prize award 2 years ago. So the council's got the ability to do some great things. But this is a scheme for Anglia Square, which is a big, basically currently a sort of shopping complex. But they want to build a 20-story tower with 1,200 one and two bed flats in 12 blocks of up to 12 stories. This is how it would look if it was built. Anyway, it was approved by the council in 2018. Some of the views from the surrounding site. Sorry, my clock in the background. Forgive me. There'll be all 8 bongs. Anyway, so this is a site just north. It's a Grade 1 listed churchyard. This is what the development would look like. So quite a change for the local people in terms of scale and bulk. The blue bits are all the surrounding development, and we've got the tower in the middle there. But we took legal action. We actually called for a public inquiry, which was heeded by the Secretary of State. So actually, we had a full public inquiry in February last year, where we fought the developer and the council. And part of that, eventually we were victorious. We won the case, even though they appealed as well. They actually withdrew from the High Court action, presumably because they felt that they couldn't win, or who knows. But anyway, part of the campaign was to provide an alternative vision and promote this. So this is a scheme showing how the site could be built out at a very large scale, 500 homes here, but using the original street pattern with shops at ground floor and a maximum of 4 to 5 stories in height rather than 12 and 20. Some of the sketches just to get the imagination going as to what could be done. Again, not a planning scheme, but just a concept of what could be done within the setting. One of Say's greatest campaigns and victories was to save the market buildings at Smithfield. Some of you may know them. Instead of 6 buildings in total, you've got the 2 meat markets, which are Grade 2 star listed at one end, which are still operational until the City of London moves them out to Dagenham. The rest of the buildings are a mixture, and they basically fell into disrepair in the 1990s. It's a lovely, amazing set of Victorian market halls. You can see here all these amazing roofs running all the way through central London here. And but they fell into disrepair in the 1990s, the set at the end, and they were basically left to rot until the early 2000s, when the amazing glazed ceilings with the cast iron work all over the place, an amazing dome in the middle which was bombed in the war and replaced. So a lot of history here, fantastic street scenes, decorative details. Anyway, so in 2008, a developer called Henderson Global Investments decided they wanted to demolish the lot and build this whacking great office block, which we fought against at a public inquiry, and we won. We took the City of London Corporation, the richest planning authority in the country, on, and we won. But that wasn't enough, because in 2014 another developer came back with a different scheme. This is a developer called Thornfield, who since gone bust, but they had another scheme where they gut all of it apart from the outer wall and put a big office in the middle. So we fought that at a public inquiry, and we also won that public inquiry. And a big part of that was because we presented an alternative vision for the market. So miraculously using them as a market building for different uses, a mixed use for public entertainment, for shops, and all sorts of things. We was put to the inquiry so people can actually get a sense that it was a viable alternative to just flattening the lot. This is a very simple graphic showing how the outer walls could be renovated to make the shop fronts active again, rather than looking sad. Of course, the context has changed now very much, because this is 7 years ago. But at the time, it was very important, and it helped us win the inquiry. We even commissioned 100 actresses to dress up as Lady Gaga, the pop actress, to march to the Secretary of State at the time, Eric Pickles, ahead of his decision to convince him to save Smithfield Market. So again, a use of imagery and ideas to try and get the imagination going and get people's attention, because these things often happen so quietly. It was actually retweeted by Lady Gaga herself, which obviously propelled the whole campaign into many new fields. We had people outside the stations nearby giving away fruit and telling people, commuters on their way to work, what was going on, just so they were aware. And street theatre as well. So it shows you what can happen. But overall, we were successful, and the buildings were saved. And miraculously, they are now set to become the new Museum of London site. So a national museum of great importance, moving from their current site at the Barbican. And they'll inhabit all the buildings. They'll be fully renovated. Some amazing spaces in and around the buildings, which will be created for the public. And to cap it all off, in May this year, we actually had a royal visit from Prince Charles, who came to inspect the buildings and congratulate everyone on the what was a campaign of at least 16 years to get from demolition to reuse. So it can take a lot of time in some cases. Hopefully not that same in Minley Home Farm, but we'll have to wait and see. And this is Marcus Binney Saves president, showing Prince Charles Save scheme that helped save it in 2014 at the public inquiry. So commissioning alternative schemes, really, really important part of our work. And this is another case in 2015 on the Strand. So the King's College London University owns these set of buildings, Victorian and Georgian. Again, nice buildings have been left to rot. They closed a couple of academic departments, and they no longer wanted to do anything with the buildings, so they let them rot. So they proposed demolishing them all and facading one of them, the one on the right. So just keeping the skin of the building, and behind it's all different, and putting this building in its place. We took legal action. We wrote letters to MPs, to councillors, to the planning department, to everyone we could. And a public inquiry was called. We did lots of press coverage. We did a petition, got over 10,500 signatories, which was to King's College London to stop doing what they were doing. We used social media a lot to promote things. We've got over 21,000 followers on our social media page. And we also commissioned a scheme. So this scheme was by our architectural firm called Burrell Foley Fisher. Very simple. Retain the buildings and convert them and reuse them. And this is the idea sketch that was used to try and convince King's College that they could be reused, and also that you could achieve what they wanted to achieve by reusing the buildings rather than demolishing them. Here you can see a cutaway diagram showing King's wants to have more teaching space and an amphitheatre below, and lo and behold, you can do all of it. Anyway, so they actually withdrew their scheme after our petition, and lo and behold, in 2018 they came back with a different scheme, which you can see here, which proposed Bob's Your Uncle, keeping the buildings and converting them for new use. So it shows you what can be done through long-term campaigning, visual presentations, and a simple, clear message about that you don't need to demolish buildings, you can reuse them and convert them very successfully. Richmond House, we've been fighting the government for a long time to say this grade 2 star listed building. It's the Ministry for Health, which is on Whitehall. It's right opposite the Cenotaph. It's just out of shot to the right. This is the extent of the building they wanted to demolish. They've been in red. So this is the government, as the head of the climate conference, the UN climate conference in November. We just wanted to demolish these buildings at a cost of £1.6 billion. It's a billion. And this is just post-COVID, of course, as well. So we've been fighting the plans. They basically want to create a like-for-like chamber, a commons chamber in a rebuilt building behind here. So demolish the lot, rebuild it at that cost, whilst the Palace of Westminster is refurbished. Itself a scheme that will cost £4 billion, expected to cost a lot more. We very much support that, but we felt very strongly that in a time of changing finances, and COVID then came along and has really put a great pressure on the public purse, that spending £1.6 billion building a like-for-like chamber with calf leather seats was probably not quite the right thing that our national government should be doing. This is what they proposed. Very, amazing glass for new gallery around the top. But we combated the idea because very early on, you can actually put a like-for-like chamber in the courtyard of the existing building. It fits. So we put forward a scheme which showed that you could build a scheme at a mere £40 million compared to 1.6 billion to give them the facilities that they wanted during the restoration of the Palace of Westminster. And again, some simple drawings and plans commissioned by an architect called Mark Hines were very much used, and we've been lobbying very hard with MPs to convince them to change their path. And luckily, we think they have. So watch this space, because there might be some very, very big changes coming up. Big part of our work is buildings at risk, and I think so. Moving on from planning applications, buildings at risk sit everywhere around the country. They're owned in all sorts of ways. They are of all kinds, shapes and sizes, and they're very, very beautiful. And we keep a register since 1992 of over 1,600 buildings now which are in need of new uses. And we use this to campaign to raise the profile, and sometimes to try and draw new ownership. This is just some of the amazing buildings. You've got water towers, you've got mills, you've got banks, you've got greenhouses, you've got office blocks, you've got town halls, you've got water mills, you've got houses, you've got, you name it, it's there. Which shows you the amazing amount of heritage around the country which is just left empty and rotting. We produce an annual Buildings at Risk catalogue, which is available for our members. Of course, please do sign up. I'll give some details at the end if you wish to get involved and support our work. But again, a really good way of showcasing selection of these buildings to people, and often draws interest of people who want to renovate them. And this is just some of the buildings which are on sale over the last year. So you've got anything from a pub to a manor to a church to a decorative summer house. So you've got all sorts of stuff which comes up, and our work is part of the process to try and help spread the word. We also provide listing support for buildings. Obviously, Minley Home Farm is a good example, but we do all sorts of things. This is an Art Deco cinema in Liverpool called the Abbey, which is frequented by John Lennon and George Harrison of the Beatles. It is a 1937 super cinema, so fitted over 1,300 people at the time, so very much of its period. And ever since the 1970s, it closed as a cinema actually, and was operated by the Co-op supermarket until April last year, when it was sold to Lidl supermarkets. Lidl supermarkets, I would be happy to be corrected, but they do not convert buildings. They build their own formulas of formulaic buildings which fits their business model, which are always new builds. And they with that in mind, we applied for listing with the local community. This is what Lidl proposed. Love it or loathe it, it would involve 10,000 tons of non-recyclable waste in a time of climate crisis, and it had already operated as a cinema, as a supermarket, which is what we argued all along. But Lidl didn't want to listen. But oh, here we go. Some of the same slides. The local civic society, plural, but multiple civic societies, got together. They launched a big campaign using Facebook, social media, and they launched a petition on change.org. Got 7,000 signatures across the country, which is fantastic. And the listing application was successful, and the building is now listed at grade 2, which means Lidl can't demolish it. So that was a good example of something which can be done through our work. It got lots of national press coverage, to Lidl's dismay. Another case is a station in Suffolk at Brandon. Wouldn't expect anyone to have gone there. It's middle of between Cambridge and Norwich on the railway, an active railway line. Station building, 1845, one of the earliest railway periods. Nat Flint building, very much of the local flint. Brandon was famous for Nat Flint used for gun rifles during the First and Second World Wars. It's also very close to RAF Lakenheath, which is an important air base at the time. The station's owned by the taxpayer, Network Rail, but is leased to the rail operator Greater Anglia, who wanted to demolish this building. So they wanted to. Oh, there's some pictures from over its history here. You can see from right up from the 19th century. Some amazing drawings of the building in detail. Yeah, so Greater Anglia wanted to demolish the building. We took legal action against them and found that their application was not compliant, and it was actually thrown out despite having already been approved. So it can show you what can be done even at the 11th hour. And the listing application that we put in was successful, but it was really fascinating because it brought out so much history from lots of local people. So a local historian got in touch to say that, did you know that George VI and Queen Elizabeth visited the station in 1945 to visit the troops? And here they are. It was also a base for Polish troops at the time. This came from a local councillor with Polish heritage who spotted our campaign and said, oh, wow, I've got all these photographs in my bag. And yeah, some amazing stuff over the years. And of course, someone else got in touch to say, don't panic, because of course, Brandon featured in a 1970s episode of Dad's Army. And here are some shots of it in an episode called The Big Parade in series 4, if you ever want to look it up. And not that important in the context of life, but an interesting thing that came out of the woodwork. Anyway, the building's been saved and through listing, and is due to be converted and refurbished, hopefully as a bike shop, as part of renewal of rail travel, and you know, as society starts to open up again. We commissioned some watercolors to try and show people what it could look like when it was actually a bit like Minley. You know, when a building is looking decrepit, people think, oh, it's a goner. There's nothing can be done. But it's really important to try and counter that narrative. And so simple things like this can really help. We also commissioned a little scheme to show how it can be converted to office and shops. And lo and behold, Greater Anglia wants to demolish another station at Seoul House, this one here. So we're taking some of the things we do to support a different community in saving their station building. You can't win everything. I just wanted to hasten to add, we don't lose every battle that we fight. So we don't win every battle we fight. So this is the Solent Flour Mills in Southampton, right on the docks. It's a very nice Art Deco flour mill. Was anyway. It's owned by Associated British Ports, the port operator, and they wanted to demolish it, so they did, and we couldn't stop them. So here it is, and there it is, and it's now rubble. That's almost 100,000 tons of not recyclable waste. So that will all be in landfill soon, which is great. This is an Edwardian school in Surrey, in the town of Redhill, which the community got really behind. You can see them here in a COVID-compliant protest to local councillors. Unfortunately, local councillors weren't interested, so the building was torn down, and it's now a flat site, and they built a set of 10 prefab units on it. So it shows you what can and can't be done, and you can't save them all, but you certainly can try. And that leads me to conclude my set of slides. But I just want to say that, of course, we do lots of work. We have e-newsletters. We have a printed newsletter twice a year, which is available to our friends and members. So if you wish and would want to sign up and support our work, you can do so as a friend for as little as £3 a month, or save you for a little more. But that would directly go towards this kind of work. I say we get no government funding. Hopefully you can see we managed to achieve quite a lot just for 6 people, and not all of us are even full time. But lots of updates on our website, so please do check it out if you are interested. And of course, if you're concerned about a building, like Minley, like we got that from dog walkers, please just get in touch. My email details are there, and I'm sure we can disperse those afterwards. And that leaves me to conclude. So thanks very much.